I know we've been preaching a lot of hope here on the show, but I'll just go ahead and say it. If Kentucky basketball loses to Vanderbilt tonight, the season might as well be over.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for various SEC-related things, but on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and new customers, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. You can visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Vanderbilt Commodores, worst team in the SEC. If UK loses this game, the season may be taking a turn for the very worst. Going to break this matchup down, tell you what Vanderbilt does well, it's not a lot, tell you what they don't do well, it's a lot, and give you my final score predictions and talk about what the conversations should look like if Kentucky loses this game, having lost 3 out of their last 4, and if they take this one down, it would be 4 out of their last 5. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky versus Vanderbilt. The Commodores right now 6-15 on the season, 1-7 in conference play, coming off of their only conference play or conference win so far this season, 68-61 over Missouri. Got that win at home. Missouri Tigers, one of the 3 worst teams in the SEC as well. Jerry Stackhouse and company are just not getting it done this year, and Jerry Stackhouse has not really been able to get it done a whole lot this year. Obviously finished 22-15 last season. A solid year there, but 6-15 to start here, and it's not looking good on either side of the ball. We'll talk about what they do well first. I think the first thing that we have to note is the fact that Ezra Mannion, their lead guard, is pretty solid, as is Tyron Lawrence. Their 2 guards at the very top are decent at best, but do not shoot worth a rip, quite frankly, in this conference. Mannion averages 14.7 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, 3.4 assists, while shooting 44% from the floor and 30% from 3. All subpar numbers that you would expect from a team's lead guard, especially in this conference. Tyron Lawrence, 14.2 points per game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, while shooting 39% from the floor and a mere 25% from 3. I think it's worth noting that guard there, Tyron Lawrence, leads the team in rebounds at 5.4. The only other double-digit scorer on this roster is Vin Allen Lubin, who is averaging 10 points a game, shooting 47% from the floor as a forward and shooting 30% from beyond the arc. 66.4 points per game is what the Vanderbilt Commodores average per contest. And really, to be honest with you guys, I would love to kind of take this a step further, but that's kind of where the good really does end for the Vanderbilt Commodores. So far this season, they're one of the deepest teams, if you'd like to call it that, in the country. They are 6th nationally in bench minutes. They like to rotate in their guys. And the thing about Jerry Stackhouse that I've never really understood with his offense, and well, this will kind of be the good and the bad here. At times, Stackhouse has had guys that can really turn it up on the offensive end of the floor, that can isolate and score and have looked really impressive doing so. They can also, at times, have played pretty solid defense during his tenure with Vanderbilt. But this year, it's not necessarily the case, and I want to say back 2 years ago when I started the show, one of the first preview episodes I did was of Vanderbilt. After watching the offense, studying some film, learning some things about how Stackhouse teaches at his camps, I'm not a big fan of the way that he likes to operate his offense. There's a lot of different horns elements within his style of play. You like to see guards driving downhill, getting to the block, and trying to make plays, whether it be dumping it off to the forward and them and that individual making a play themselves, or it's the guard trying to do some type of fadeaway, some type of post up themselves, or trying to lay the ball up, kick it out for a three as well. It's kind of similar to some different weave action that you've seen Kentucky run, except that Vanderbilt doesn't really seem to know where to go with it this year. It's kind of been directionless. I've gotten to see the Commodores play in person after watching their offense. I can tell you it's not particularly impressive, especially when it comes to distributing the basketball. I think the sign of any good offense is the ability to actually pick up some assists, at least relative to your field goals made here and there. And not only does Vanderbilt not play with pace, but they also just don't distribute. They are 339th in the country in assist per field goals made. Only 41.7% of their baskets. They just don't pass the rock around a ton. But again, like I said, in the past, that has led them different opportunities with different personnel to score in bunches, because they've had some guys in the past that have done really well in isolation, or have done well really individually, I guess, running the offense. Scottie Pippen Jr. is the guy that you think of from a couple of seasons ago, where he was really good at scoring in isolation and knocking down a ton of shots. He was kind of their volume guy. Unfortunately, this season, the team as a whole is not doing well, and they have not been able to solidify that one stud in the backcourt that can kind of take them to the next level. So the Vanderbilt Commodores so far this season have just not necessarily been impressive in terms of overall record. Their offense has struggled immensely. Their defense, we'll get to later on in the show, outside of the fact that it's I would say underneath average, but it's not terrible. This is just not a well-coached team. Right now, they are projected to finish the season 8-23. They're projected to lose, although I will say they're projected to lose every single game on KenPom to close the season out. Despite only being 6-15, it still says they've got a chance to be 8-23. So yeah, I don't really know what else you do with this team right now at this point, outside of their two lead guards. Again, Ezra Mannion, Tyron Lawrence. Also, Jason Rivera-Torres is another major contributor according to KenPom. He's used on quite a bit of possessions. Also pretty solid in terms of steal percentage, shooting 31% from three, which is the best mark out of Vanderbilt's top seven shooters, excuse me. So yeah, just not a lot of hope right now for the Commodores, who have very little going for them. So I want to continue this conversation, talk about kind of what Vanderbilt's doing not so well, and how maybe Kentucky can attack that. Before I get into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl Sunday is almost here, and happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, getting some friends, some snacks, and looking at your phone and placing down some super awesome bets before the game. And FanDuel has so many different ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3, because not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58 between the 49ers and the Chiefs, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more on top of that. New customers, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to either the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, would greatly appreciate that as well. Trying to get to 7,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Let's keep it pushing. Excited to reach that mark, and really appreciative of everybody who has joined the club so far. So join up, subscribe today. All right, so this Kentucky-Vanderbilt matchup, not a lot of hope in the Commodores right now. Let's talk about some of the things that they do poorly, and I'm going to try not to rag on them too hard, just kind of go down the list here. Obviously, they have not been able to execute against almost any level of talent Their non-conference slate actually started off with a dud, losing at home to open the season to Presbyterian, who is the 303rd best team in the country according to KenPom. Went on a 3-game winning streak after that, but then at that point it was just all negative and downhill from there. They've lost to, they lost to Arizona State, they lost to Boston College, NC State, San Francisco at home. They lost to Texas Tech, they lost to Western Carolina, lost to Memphis by 2. Their conference slate, they've started off 0-7 before they beat Missouri last weekend. It's just not been a great record. Also, something else I want to point out, and I mentioned it earlier but didn't talk about it in a negative light, 66.4 points per game is not going to get it done. That's bad. That's just simply bad. Their offense is 234th nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency. They shoot 44.9% from the floor in terms of effective field goal percentage. Their field goal percentage overall is 39.2, which is abysmal. They shoot 28% from 3. That's one of the worst marks in the country. It's like I think the 20-somethingth worst 3-point mark, 348th nationally. They turn the ball over a little bit. They don't grab offensive rebounds. They don't shoot free throws well. They're somehow even worse inside the arc than they are outside the arc, shooting 46% from 2. They get blocked a lot. They don't distribute the ball. They play with a slow pace. They're one of the slowest teams in the country. Definitely one of the slowest in this conference. And that's just the offense. The defense, slightly underneath average. They don't create turnovers. They do grab defensive rebounds, but they allow almost 37% shooting from 3. And teams quite often get to the charity stripe and knock down free throws against them as well. So it's not a good offense. It's not a good defense. They give up threes. They play with a slow pace. They don't have a ton of talent. All of this to say, Kentucky should win this game. They should win this game by a lot. In my mind, KenPom only has them winning this game by 11. I think Kentucky can definitely push this. Just on paper, I think Kentucky is a better team. They are faster. They shoot threes very well. They run in transition on both ends of the floor, and they just will outscore the Commodores. They will just outscore Vanderbilt unless they just go completely cold from the field, which will not be of Vanderbilt's doing, by the way. It won't be Vanderbilt that's pushing Kentucky and shutting them down on offense. If that happens, we'll have that conversation in a minute. On paper, Rob Dillingham, Antonio Reeves, Reed Shepherd, DJ Wagner, if he's able to play, those 4 guys may outscore the Commodores on their own if they're all clicking. If they're all having a good night, they may pop off and outscore Vanderbilt on their own. This is the opportunity for Kentucky to show that they can make steps forward on defense by shutting down a team that does not have that second gear. Because Vanderbilt does not. They just have not shown that all season long. If they show it here, there are some major conversations that we're going to need to have. There are some major problems. I think Kentucky wins this game. Again, like I said, I think they win it by quite a bit. I think that 83-72, this is the first time I'm going to strongly differ against KenPom here, and I will eat my words if I end up being completely wrong or somehow Kentucky loses this game. They should not lose this contest. Should not. The line is at like 8.5, 7.5, which really bothers me, by the way. If you're looking at Vegas betting lines, not comfortable with that at all. Kentucky just is better. They just are better. I think the only thing that I could think of that will make this game competitive is the style of play. If Vanderbilt wants to play slow and they're hitting their shots early, Kentucky's offense, which is sporadic and gives the opponent more possessions per game because of how quickly they play, that could make it a more even contest because Kentucky is shooting more, Mountain maybe not making a ton, Vanderbilt being more efficient with their possessions, kind of making the score more even. I think at the end of the day, Kentucky would still win that matchup because they're just going to get more opportunities to score, and the team can just simply score better. Hopefully, a defensive collapse does not happen. I think Kentucky wins this game. I'm going to say they hit 90. I'll go 92-75. That's where I will land on this one for the Commodores. I just do not see Kentucky losing this game. If they do lose this game, what's it going to look like for UK moving forward? What are the conversations? I just want to go ahead and prep. Let's just go ahead and prepare. If Kentucky loses this game, what should we be talking about heading into the Gonzaga contest this weekend? Before I dive into that, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive, because eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to fit your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. So we've gone through here, talked about the Commodores, talked about what they do well, talked about what they struggle with, and I want to discuss now the hypothetical world, which could be reality, that Kentucky loses this game. If Kentucky loses this contest to a 6-15 Vanderbilt team after losing 3 out of their last 4 and starting conference play 5-4, what would now be 5-5, there should be conversations about the direction of this program underneath the people that currently manage it. Should they be in place? Are they doing their job correctly? Can they change? Will things ever change? Because Kentucky right now, they should go on a 3-game win streak. This should be a 3-game win streak. You go to Nashville tonight, win this game. You return home. You should beat Gonzaga. And then you play another home game against Ole Miss. You should beat the Rebels. You are better than all 3 of these teams, I think. Then you go on the road and play Auburn, and that's going to be a tough contest, but that's a game you should at least compete in. You should improve to 18-6 and 7-4 in conference play. That's where you should be heading into the matchup in Neville Arena on February 17th. If that does not happen, it will be a conversation where we talk about how extremely underwhelming so far this year I think that this coaching staff has been with their personnel. Because this team can be better. They can be better. The defense could be better. I find it very hard to believe that Coach John Calipari and this coaching staff brought in a number of 5-star recruits and none of them want to or can play defense. I refuse to believe that. Some of the best players in the entire country coming out of high school don't believe that they cannot play defense. I don't believe it. So Vanderbilt should lose this game. Kentucky should, honestly, they should win their next 3. It'll be a shame if they don't. The Wildcats still have everything on the table. Even if they go 2-1, they've still got everything on the table. But man, oh man, it's going to be rough if Kentucky somehow takes this one down against VU. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think should happen? if Kentucky loses this game? What do you think should happen if they start to struggle down the stretch here? Because I think they should start to catch fire. That's where I'm looking right now. You can leave all of that in the YouTube comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_ and follow the show on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.